Be kind to your mind. Here are some tips to reduce stress and promote well-being. Breathe. Pause. Reflect. Connect with friends and family. Keep to a healthy routine. Be kind to yourself and others. Reach out for help if you need it. And watch balls in your face marketing with this week's guest and wellness expert, Jennifer Watson.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Balls in Your Face Marketing. It's been a while since we've talked about mental health, wellness, and so forth, so I'm very excited today to speak with Jennifer Watson. She is the founder of Jennifer Watson Leadership and Watson Wellness. She's an accomplished speaker and coach, having had appearances on TEDx, NBC, Fox Radio, and many podcasts. She's an expert in wellness and leadership development, as well as a few categories that I'm curious to ask about. She talks about mental edge enhancement, movement and change adaptation, as well as soul-aligned living. So Jennifer, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Julian. It's an honor, pleasure to be here. I love chatting about this stuff. So thank you so much for having me on.
It's my pleasure. And we're due. As I said, I've done some episodes in the past about psychology, mental health, and so forth, all before COVID ever started. We haven't done an episode about this, so I think it's obviously a great time to talk about wellness. But let's get right down at the sort of the ground level and say, what do we mean by wellness?
Yeah, it's really interesting. Most of the time before COVID, even before COVID, we thought of wellness just I'll call it in the physical realm. That's where we think of wellness. We think automatically of health, physical health. How are we feeling physically in our body? What are some ailments we're having in our body? Or maybe we have weight loss goals. Like, we're just always about the physical space. Now, I will say, in the last 10 years, we've really catapulted wellness to a new space where the stigma with mental wellness, how to support mental wellness, has broke free a little bit. And I'm so excited to see that. And we've seen more summits and more information and knowledge on incorporating that into wellness. But we still had this tendency, right, to think of, quote, wellness in a physical realm. This year, obviously, has really catapulted us to not only look at physical wellness, what we can do to optimize our physical health, but realizing what mental wellness really means and the power of it. People have really struggled with mental wellness. I'll just say emotional wellness, feeling emotionally stable this year, and they're getting it. They're like, wow, this mentally emotional, what I feel unstable in, is affecting my overall health, not just my mental, but actually my physical, and then my job, and then my relationships. So wellness, first and foremost, has been brought to the forefront this year for people to really get it. They were starting to get it, but this year really get that wellness is physical, it's emotional, it's mental, it's spiritual. Like, what do I believe about myself? And when you're breaking down in any one of those four components, and maybe all four, because we've all had that a little bit this year, we have to know how to dial that in and really honor where we're at, and then have tools to really create stability and overall wellness. So that's where we're at. And I think when we get that this year, it's really helping people create this new space of empowerment for themselves, even during a year that's been so up and down and fluctuating. There's a lot of power in controlling your wellness, and you can do that.
Mm-hmm. And there's been an increasingly, amount of data and information and research that shows the interconnectivity between that physical and mental well-being, that the better the shape that your body is in, the better shape that your mind is in, and conversely.
Yes.
So what's happened during COVID? I mean, what are the sort of the casualties of COVID in this realm?
Yeah, I've worked with a lot. So I'm a practitioner by trade, and I've done a lot for the physical to boost immunity, but I've had more people come to me coaching, and I'm talking from leaders of teams to just leading their family, and they really struggle with the mental and emotional component, Julian. So what people need to understand with that is that can be healed too. So when you come to me with really struggling with that instability, like, Jen, I don't know what I believe. I'm really stressed about my family. I'm really stressed about a lot of things. What I'm finding people are the most triggered in that mental wellness, emotional wellness, what's so unstable about it are two things: death and poverty. Death and poverty, right? We've been treated this year of like, am I going to get it? What's it going to do? What's it going to do to my family? Poverty, am I going to lose my job? Are they going to reduce the hours? Can I find a job? So those two things for all of us have been triggered a lot. Some of us have been more affected by it than others in some categories. But remember, those are also two innate desires for people to have, is to have stability and health.
Mm. Yeah, I think stability is the big issue there, right? It's the I think that's a big part of it. Exactly. It's just the sheer unpredictability of what's happening. It's the uncertainty that makes people very uncomfortable. We like order.
100%. And if it's triggering two major fears that, by the way, is in all human beings, and we don't have the tools to dial in, I call that fear, and create opportunities, not only dial it in, but creatively, how can I make this work for me? Where can I make money? Where can I optimize my health? If you don't have that, you're going to go into what we call the critter brain, the fight or flight, and you're going to make decisions that are emotional based versus objectively productive based, and you're just going to get in that fight or flight and stay there, because your carnal brain is your primal brain is a really beautiful thing. It's just saying, I want to keep you safe, but it limits you on opportunities to get out of it. So what I've done with a lot of my clients, I don't care if they're a stay-at-home mom and feeling like their family's kind of stressed and broken down, or a leader of a team, they're like, I'm really struggling here and my team's struggling. And the first things we target are those two topics, death and poverty. Where are you at first as a leader? Then where's your team at? And you'll be surprised, everybody's looking at it differently and fearing it differently. But once you get a barometer on that, you have a place to start, Julian. And that's where we can give, and we can go into that today, the appropriate tools. Like, okay, this is what you're feeling. This is what your fear is about, whether it's true or not. We're going to get into that. And then let's give you a tool to create stability and creative opportunities to get out of that. Because by the way, everybody this year can 100% have mental stability, emotional stability, and they can absolutely be successful in money, be successful in health even now. But we have to understand where people are at individually and in a group setting, if that's where you're at as well, because a lot of us are at least in a minimal group setting in families, right? Figure out where everybody's at, get it on the table. Don't be afraid of that. What is your fear? Then what can we do with this? And then provide the right mental, emotional tools to create stability, then tools to create action steps for the goals that you really want this year, and it can happen.
So let's dig into some of, like, what are those tools? What are they that especially at least the ones that are kind of readily accessible to everyone, the do-it-yourselfer out there who just feels like they want to try and kind of steer this ship on their own? What are some of the tools that they can use?
Yeah, I think that's such a great thing. So I tell a lot of people, health and wellness is free. Health and wellness, some of the greatest tools out there are actually free. Yes, you can get coaches, you can do so much different things with food and diet and meditation and counseling, all these things, which, by the way, some people need additional support in, but there's a lot of things you can do right now. And I always say the power of three. There's three things that can feel really empowering for you, that can get the biggest bang for your buck, but not be overwhelming. So the first thing that I tell everybody to create mental, emotional stability, which is going to help, again, physical and overall wellness, get quiet. Get quiet. Get quiet. And that sounds really funny, Julian, but what happens, again, when you're freaking out, I'm not doing about whatever you're fearing about, you get yourself in fight or flight. You're not thinking about anything objectively. You have to be willing to get quiet. And that's scary for people, because then they have to feel the feels of the fear they're feeling. But when you sit in a room by yourself, feet flat on the floor, and you're just willing to feel whatever that fear, anxiety that you're having right now, that emotional instability, and just feel it. For one, they've shown this in research, it dissipates more quickly. But two, when you get yourself in a calm state, quiet state, it brings in what we call more your parasympathetic mindset. You're calm and clear, your aligned mindset versus the sympathetic run from a bear. So you're always going to make better decisions, more creative ideas of how to get out of this current state of where you're at will come to you. So you got to get quiet. And when I say quiet, it's like 5 minutes. People are like, I'm paying you the big bucks to tell me to get quiet for 5 minutes. I'm like, yes, you're paying me. But it's hard for a lot of people because it feels yucky, because you have to be willing to sit with the fear for a little bit. So get quiet is the biggest thing. Okay. The second thing you want to do is you start writing down what you are grateful for on that particular topic that you're having fear about. Let's just say, Jennifer, I have so much anxiety about, I just lost my job. I don't know where we're going to put food on the table. Like, I'm really freaking out. It's creating so much emotional, mental instability. Great. Sit with it. Get quiet. Get quiet. Feel it. You're a human being. You're having a human experience. Honor that. When you're quiet, now get out a pencil and a piece of paper. Write down what you are grateful for right now that has everything to do with that fear. You know what? I don't have a job right now, but right now I have a roof over my head. Right now, I do have food on the table. Right now, I know I've been through hard times before and I still have a roof over my head. Does that make sense? So you're writing down things, 2 or 3 things that you're really grateful for that has to do with that particular topic that you're having so much anxiety about. Guess what's going to happen next? On the flip side of that paper, we're going to do the third thing. All of a sudden, you're going to get one idea. Oh my gosh, what can I do right now to actually make this a different story for me? You'll be surprised in this job example. I've done this myself. Like, oh my gosh, this friend just told me about someone that needed this help. Even if it was a 2-week job stint, it's still money. I might call her today. Does that make sense? So you guys really listen to this. Get quiet when you're feeling mentally, emotionally unstable about a fear you're having this year. Get really quiet for 5 minutes. Get out a piece of paper. Write down 2 or 3 things that you're grateful for that actually have to do with that fear. You'll be surprised what you can be grateful for, even with that fear. Then it's going to turn on this creative brain in your head. Writing down, getting grateful always does that. And then will give you opportunities to think of things you can do on the flip side of that paper. 1 thing, 2 things. This is what I can do to create a job opportunity. This is what I can do. I'm telling you, this works every day of the week, Julian, and twice on Sunday.
Yeah.
This basic. And you can do this.
I'm a huge advocate. And by the way, I mean, I think generally speaking, like, I mean, I'm someone who's very, I have a very kind of steep sort of meter for kind of BS or hokiness or thing, like this. But I can tell people, first of all, from my studies in the past in psychology and reading up on it now, we learned so much about neuroplasticity. That whole adage of, you can't teach an old dog new tricks turns out to be completely false. And I agree wholeheartedly that to an extent, we manifest our own realities based on our attitudes and our perceptions.
Yes.
I think gratitude is absolutely a great place to start. Yeah. In terms of having that positive attitude mindset. And exactly, like I think you're right. If people are calm, focused, find things to be positive and grateful for. Adversity is a great teacher.
Yes.
So yes, exactly. I think so. It's very easy for people to kind of fall back into like, this is I've taken a hit over this. I feel defeated, rather than, okay, I've learned a lot. This has been a valuable life lesson. Now I know to avoid X, I avoid Y. I should do more of this, less of that. Right. Go ahead.
I love your point, Julian, because the thing is, I do teach and coach very differently. What you said is, I am about gratitude. And like I said, there's so much about neuroplasticity, but what I said, get very specific. When you're in fear about something, you hit that adversity head on. You got to be willing to feel crappy about it. We are driven by our emotions. Emotions, we know the cycle. Emotions dictate action, dictate success. When you're feeling adversity, this mental wellness trigger, whatever's triggering you, anxiety, depression, because whatever happening this year, again, I'm all about leveraging, Julian. How you do one thing is how you do another. Sit with it. Feel the yuckiness of it. You're not going to die from emotions, but let your body give you information. Sit with it. Be quiet, and then get very specific on your gratitude. When you do that, because your brain just said you need to be afraid you're going to die because you don't have a job. That's what your brain is saying, by the way. Sit with it. That's okay. Namaste it. Great. But I'm going to give my brain, like you said, this neuroplastic opportunity to think of something different. What do I have? Get very specific about your gratitude. What do I have to be grateful for that has to do with this fear? And then the opportunity for solution will come on the last piece of paper. Adversity gives you that opportunity. And by the way, all of us, if you wrote down your storyline, Julian, we all, again, another way to battle your brain, have had times in our life way before this year. And by the way, it's going to happen even after this year, right? Adversity that we've had. And you can see all the things that you learned, the tools you acquired to then jump back up and get successful again. We all have that storyline. So that's another thing can get people out of fight or flight is look at what we've done in the past with adversity. Let's just dial it in with these 3 separate tools. And if you get really quiet, you get really grateful, specific on your fear, just like hit it head on. Don't be afraid to do that. That's part of adversity training that I do with people. And then you're going to get this creative part that comes out because neuroplasticity starts happening right away. And the only other thing I would say to that, Julian, is you got to dump you got to be willing to dump people, places, things that are triggering you and keeping you in this fear-based emotional state. For you to put this good stuff in gratitude and get ideas of how to get out of this space, if there's people, places, things that are triggering you, you've got to dump. It's just like when you do a cleanse with food. I do this with people all the time. You got to cleanse your body, go through a detox, and then get the good stuff in. The stuff that I'm talking about, these 3 free things that if you do them every day are so powerful, and all of a sudden you're going to see this emotional mental stability improve. It's wonderful. But if you can also dump people, places, things that are not serving you, that are triggering you, that are making you emotional. People are like, what do you mean by that? People that are making you high anxiety, getting you into that emotional, unstable space. It's okay. It doesn't mean they're bad. It just means they're not your people right now. The places that used to go doesn't mean it's a bad place. It's not your place right now. You got to get really aware of what's triggering you. Social media is really, really a big thing for people right now. Is you have to put boundaries on that, or maybe get rid of certain friends that maybe trigger who you are and creates that emotional instability. So those 3 tips are really important. But what I would say is preface that is you've got to be willing to dump a few things out of your life that are triggering you, because then you're kind of fighting against this, like doing this tug of war with, a rope, right? Like you're doing these 3 things I'm mentioning, but then you're on social media 5 hours a day,
Yeah.
that, and it's triggering you. So you have to be willing to be really hyper aware, and that's okay. Don't shame yourself. We're all being triggered in different ways, and take those things out. And I'm telling you, your brain is going to honor you for that. And then you're going to get some traction on the 3 tips we just mentioned.
You're touching on something that is very sort of dear to me, and I've been talking about this for years. As somebody who's in the space of marketing and then went into digital marketing, social media took over. So I basically just through my career had no choice but to kind of to learn it and understand it. And I do absolutely see all kinds of wonderful benefits. The fact that here you and I are able to have a Zoom conversation, see each other, rather than just talk on the phone, that's wonderful. And I consider this a very sort of constructive use of social media. But at the same time, I'm very outspoken about the fact that there are a lot of deleterious side effects of social media. In particular, one of the issues is the siloing that these technologies, these algorithms kind of are unless you are actively trying to bust out of those cycles, actively searching for the opposite point of view than the one that you might hold, it's very easy to get stuck into this echo chamber. And there is so much noise, so much polarization. So it's really like, it's that issue right now, especially, on the heels of a hotly contested US election. That polarization just seems to get amplified year after year after year. And I've been speaking out against it. I know lots of people have, but it seems to keep getting worse. How do we combat that?
Yeah, that's such a valid point. And, like I use social media. So it's this whole, I would say, a love-hate for social media. And I think anybody that uses it enough, whether you use it personally, professionally, can say that. So first and foremost, the way you battle it, it always goes back down to self. You really have to know yourself well. Again, I go back to what really triggers you. There are some people that can go on 2 hours versus an hour of social media, and they're fine. Then others that can go 4 hours and it doesn't shift them. But our biochemistry, our neurochemistry is different. Yours is different than mine, Julian. And you really have to become hyper this year self-aware. That's very, very important. Okay. No matter what, once you become hyper self-aware, the way you can deal with, we're just talking about social media because I think it is such a big thing right now, is I would literally recommend people to cut whatever you usually do with social media in half. Cut it in half. I've had to do that. It's very hard. There's apps out there to kind of create those boundaries for you, because even if you become hyper, really self-aware what triggers you, when you're bringing that stuff in, your brain is still taking in that it's truth. It's just like, by the way, side note, that's why visualization is so great. When you feed it something that you're visualizing something that you want, it doesn't matter in that it's exactly what's happening, and it's going to create people, places, things to come to you. So visualization is a beautiful thing to replace social media with, right? But if you just let yourself get drained with social media, your brain is still taking in that it's truth. it's going to make it harder for the brain to even go to a new level that you want it to go to, whatever your goals are, even if it's emotional stability or something you want at work. So I'm encouraging everyone to really back up on social media and be honest with yourself on what triggers you, and then feed it a visualization of what you really want to see for yourself, or really want to see in the world, or what you want to see for the election. Whatever you want to see, there's huge power in that. So if people can understand, you got to take out first, and social media is a great example. There's other things you can do. Like I said, people, places, things, but social media is free way to dump. Be honest, get hyper aware, and cut it in half. And then you want to replace it with something, right? When you dump, a powerful tool is visualization, you guys. I don't care if it's one thing that you want with work, with your family, with how you want our world to look like government wise. It doesn't matter. And it's okay. It's what you care about, and visualize that in your head. And the powers that come to you, the people that come to you to make that happen, will create huge amount of confidence in you feeling that you can influence so much beauty in your world. And it domino effects where you create this huge mental edge, even during a time that you can't control everything. Because guess what? Newsflash, we can't control things out there. We can only control ourselves. So be super honest with yourself. What really triggers me? Cut that social media in half. Dump a few people, places, and things, and then replace it with what you want for yourself, what you want for the world. And it's going to bring, again, this is quantum physics, baby. This is just like when you think about a red car you want to buy, right? All of a sudden you start seeing red cars. They were always there, right? You brought it into your presence, your consciousness. Same thing with what's going on in the world. And you're wondering, how can I manipulate it? How can I influence it? I feel like I have no power. Yeah, you do. Right here. Right here.
You're reminding me of one of my favorite quotes by Epictetus, which is, we suffer not from the events of our lives, but by our interpretation of them.
Such a good quote. So true. So true.
So that's great, because you actually went ahead and you answered what I was kind of one of my questions, which was, what do you mean by mental edge? The other thing that you talk about is movement and change adaptation. So tell me a little more about what you mean by that.
Yes, absolutely. So real quick, yes, on the mental edge, I do want to say this. All that mental edge means, you guys, all it means, it's unique to all of us, but being able to ride your wave of beautiful success, no matter what's coming at you, no matter what's coming at you on the outside world. Because here's the deal. There are many people that are thriving right now. Doesn't mean we haven't had these up and downs, whether it be financially, emotionally, because they're getting what you just said. How we view the world plays a lot more effect on our mental stability and edge than that's actually what's going on in the world, you guys. I really want you to get that. When you feed yourself opportunities, the changes that happen in your brain are astronomical. Side note, there's 1 billion neuronal connections in your brain. There's 100,000 miles of blood vessels. You don't think this is the most adaptable thing in the human body. It absolutely is. When you change that, your world changes, and everything that you want now is created right now. And that is your mental edge, no matter what's happening out there. This is adversity training, adversity tolerance, and we've had a super dose of it so far this year. And that's what creating your mental edge is. That's very, very important. As far as movement, adaptation, remember, this is going back to physical and emotional, mental, they go hand in hand, right? When you create mental stability, Julian, you optimize physical stability and vice versa. I do a lot with people on movement and change adaptation. So if someone is struggling mentally, emotionally, for whatever reason, this year we've seen a lot more of that, we get really excited about what motivates them in movement. What excites them in movement? But also, if they've done the same thing over and over again, what can we tweak to make something motivating? It's very important with movement adaptation to understand, what is someone motivated to do? What do they get excited? How do they like to move, exercise, movement wise? And also something new. We got to jumpstart the brain to do something different. It's just like when you go to the gym, Julian, and your body gets used to the same workout, right? It finally gets bored and you start not seeing the same gains, right? So we have to change things up a little bit. Movement adaptation from a mental perspective is looking at things that you're motivated to do, that you love to do, that you're passionate to do from a movement perspective, but also that's different. because it's going to create two different things. Physically, it's going to optimize it to move and get stronger, but it's going to change something in your brain because it's something new. It's going into a different direction. It's just like feeding your brain new powerful thoughts. Okay. So we pull in movement adaptation in with mental health because they both, when we do things that motivate you and also that are a little bit different, change the lens, it explodes the brain, then explodes your physical health, because then you got all these creative ideas and consistency and physical well-being because you want to do it now, and they start just riffing on each other. They start feeding off each other. So movement adaptation is finding what you're highly motivated to do, because that is important, and then change it a little bit. Offer something new to the system. It's just like offering something new to the mental brain, right? I mean, it's very, very important. So I'm integrating that a lot because a lot of people need that physical movement for mental health. Like you said, that's been research-based for a long time. But doing it where it's wrapping in this beautiful dance with your mental health is huge in creating this mental, physical, emotional stability, wellness dance.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And that's been my personal experience. Absolutely. That, it's very easy to get stuck with inertia. And that it doesn't take that much, a little movement, a little because momentum has this incredible effect. The second that you just have to say, you know what? Sometimes people they're like, they look at the big picture and it's like, oh, I got to do this, I got to do that, I got to do it. And it's just overwhelming. And it's like, just move the dial, get yourself going a little bit in the right direction. You'd be surprised how a little momentum all of a sudden builds on itself. And
yes.
I've absolutely.
And, with movement, going kind of back to the movement adaptation, I work with a lot of high achieving rock stars that think they have to move 3 hours a day. And that, they're always about go, go, go. I don't care what kind of goal they have. And movement adaptation is really about tweaking things. I've had people that just haven't had time to do the 3 hours or whatever, and doing 10 minutes of a new movement or doing 10 minutes of something they really enjoy, going out in nature. They're like, Jen, the amount of shifts I'm seeing, not only mentally, but actually physically. I'm not working out 3 hours a day, but I'm feeling actually more impacted in my physical health, and it's helping my mental health. Movement adaptation is understanding what really motivates you, but tweaking a little bit and backing off, giving yourself grace this year. It is amazing when this changes, how much it changes your physical health. People are seeing themselves lose weight and get stronger, and they're working out less because they're doing something that motivates them, but also different. The body wants a trigger, a stimulus to change things. And during this time, this year, again, during adversity, that's one other powerful tool, you guys, that you can use is doing things a little different physically. Change adaptation. The body wants change. It's going to rise during adversity, even now. I love it.
So, I'm by the way, I'm a big fan of everything that you're saying. It's very much in line with a lot of sort of my own kind of philosophies around how one achieves success and what success is, which I'll define and I've shared it with my audience in the past. We'll get to it, but I do want to touch on this last one because this one's very interesting to me. Is the soul aligned living. We don't talk that much about spirituality in our lives, but I think people are starting to. I think people are starting to open up the door on this one. It seems to be going in one of two directions. Either you've got this sort of almost anti-spiritualism, anti-God, anti-whatever. And then there's this other side that I think people are realizing that we are spiritual beings and are willing to sort of incorporate this a lot because again, there's been this very sort of separation. It's almost like a separation of church and state on this issue. But I think I see a lot more people talking about this subject. So tell me a little more about soul aligned living.
I love it. I love it. So when I speak on wellness or leadership, whether I'm speaking to a team or one-on-one, like I said, I get very specific. Like we were just talking about gratitude or talking about little movement adaptations. Small, by the way, you guys, makes the biggest changes. I'm very counterintuitive the way I coach people to look at things just a hair differently, and it can completely change their lives. Your soul alignment, I don't care if you're marketing yourself. I don't care if you're reprimanding your child. I don't care if you're just doing something for your wellness goals. You need to 100% be dialed into your soul aligned purpose. And what your soul aligned purpose really is your spiritual truth. It's, by the way, I don't care if you don't believe in God, whatever. If you don't know what you believe in, remember, think of it as kind of like the radio station, like the radio. It's your anchor of what your values are, what you believe is good, true, and right for yourself and for the world, and why you think you're here on this earth, you, uniquely you, with your gifts. And if you don't have that dialed in, and I call it that, your spiritual truth, your spiritual component, your soul aligned living, you don't have your radio station dialed in to a reception that you can communicate for yourself or to others. So this whole throwing the baby out with the bathwater, I was told you can't do that, because even if you don't believe in God, that is your spiritual truth. You have to figure this out. And some people are kind of jurying what they believe in this year. Okay. So the way that I tell people to really dial in, they're like, I'm not even sure what I totally believe, Jennifer. I'm like, that's cool. We got to get you soul aligned with your purpose, because it's going to dial in everything you want to do in this life: work, family, money. So there's 3 components to dialing in your soul aligned purpose, which is basically your spiritual truth. Why are you here on this earth? First, what do you believe in? Do you believe in God? Or are you an atheist? Do you believe it's just kind of we're a collective being, kind of like Avatar, we're all collected in, kinetically with each other, and this ESP thing is going on, and we're really rejuvenating, thriving through each other. Great. You got to figure that out. What is your relationship to the world? How are you communicating to it? What does it mean to you? Second, you're really looking at what is your unique gifts, your path, your purpose, your vision. Like, what do you uniquely, because we're all, by the way, I'm an identical twin, by the way. I'm 99.9% genetic blueprint of someone else, but I still have a very different, unique skill set and vision and purpose of what I want to give to the world. Okay. Write that down. The third component is, what do you believe is good, true, and right for you and the world? It is dictating. We're getting triggered by that this year, and that's okay. You got to figure that out. And if you haven't figured it out yet, that's part of the journey here this year. So when you get those 3 components, what does it mean? What does God mean, not mean to you? What does this whole spiritual piece mean? What are your unique gifts and purpose and passion for the world? And then finally, really, what do you feel is good and true for yourself and the world? And once you start figuring that out, you're anchored. Your radio station is now dialed in, and then you intuitively can, guess what we talked about earlier, pull in the people, places, things that serve you, dump the things that don't, because you're so dialed in to what you want. And guess what, you guys, how you do one thing is how you do everything. I don't care if I'm talking about your business plan and systems or how to lead your family. When you are dialed in, this is what my vision is for my company, this is what my vision and morals are for my family, whatever it is, yes, no, boundaries, very quickly, all of a sudden you're dialing in and out the people, places, things that you need to stay on target with your soul line purpose, your spiritual truth, and everything becomes easy. All the noise you filter more quickly, because it's not your truth. You're like, nope, yes, nope, yes. And all of a sudden it starts feeling good, and you start feeling joyful and peaceful, going back to your mental health, protecting your peace. Like, oh, I can't tell you how many people I've gone back to that are even leaders of company. I'm like, why are we talking about spiritual truth and soul aligned living? I'm like, dude, if you're not doing this, you're not going to lead your team well. If you're totally chaotic right now, do you not think you're going to pass that on to your team? Like, you have to go back to this. Again, I don't care if I'm talking to you, Julian, about your marketing team or what you want to, systems are important, by the way. Having a business plan is important, you guys, by the way. Having a business plan for your family is important, but it has to start with you being aligned with your radio station. And if you can dial in those 3 components, do it today, you guys. Clear out the clutter, get that mental stability we talked about just earlier that is really easy to do. Then start writing down, what do I believe? What are my gifts? What do I believe in? Maybe you're still refining that. Don't push it. It'll come, but just have fun with it, because we're all growing into places we didn't really expect, or maybe thought that we totally believed in. It's okay. Have grace with that. But once you figure it out, oh my gosh, Julian, there's so much power with that. And going back to the neuroplasticity, when you're so aligned as F, excuse the French, to what you want, your brain just starts taking off, and it's like you're sipping things through a fire hose all of a sudden. I mean, I've had that happen this year. So much goodness coming to me. That doesn't mean I haven't had any emotional triggers, by the way. We've all had them. We're human beings living, a human experience, right? But just being so dialed in, you just start filtering very quickly. And it's such a powerful place to be, Jillian. It really, really is.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, this was something that, I started to experience, especially prior to COVID, and I was able to go out and speak at events myself, and I would get asked the question a lot in terms of, what is success to me? How does one achieve success? And for me, it's very much aligned with what you're saying. I think what's great about what you're offering, by the way, are very specific questions that people can ask themselves that will hopefully lead them to that place. But ultimately, I said, it took a lot of reflection that I kind of refined this into, this success and happiness. It's the same definition for me, is the maximized integration. And by no means, like I've said it on my show before, I'll say it again, my shit stinks too. I fall out of alignment all the time. I'm not always integrated.
Right.
But without a question, as I've experienced, first of all, again, it removes this whole idea of success being, okay, well, what is your, how much do you have in your bank account? Right. You could be earning $400,000 a year as a very successful lawyer because your mother and father wanted you to become a lawyer, and maybe you hate it because that's not what you wanted to be an artist, but because they put pressure on you, you did it, and that's great, and you're successful in that you're making $400,000 a year, but you're absolutely miserable. Something's out of alignment. So for me, it's the ultimate integration of being. What you say, what you think, what you do. Family, your work, your play, your community, whatever are those priorities for you, how does one integrate them, align them so that everything is kind of serving the other? It'll never be perfect. You can fall out of it, but that's the goal. And without a doubt, I think what you're offering, what you're saying here is very consistent with that. And I think what's great about what you're offering here is very specific questions to kind of lead down that path, get those answers.
Yeah.
I think you frozen. I don't know. There.
Yeah, I think I lost you there for a second. Yeah, Julian. But I'm all about simplicity, Julian. And I don't care if it's going back to what we first talked about just decreasing the clutter, getting really quiet, hitting your fear head on, doing these little shifts in the brain, asking these little questions. The longer I live, little steps make the biggest impact. And like you said, I'm constantly a student. I'm constantly getting in and out of alignment, but I get back in more quickly when I do these little things and just get hyper aware. And when you're really just trying to live your unique life and stop comparing out there, it is amazing how much more powerful you become and more impactful you become. And guess what? The icing on the cake, you make a lot of money. And I believe that, when you're really dialed into, like, I don't care anymore. Like, this is what my purpose is. And this is what I really want. And I'm going to use all these little tools Jennifer's given me to kind of create these boundaries and stay there. You start getting the people the relationships you've always wanted, the money you've always wanted. And it's just this icing on the cake. And again, it doesn't mean, like you said, that there's not still struggles ahead. But when you stay so aligned, you finally have these aha moments like, wow, I didn't see this before. And we're so afraid sometimes of letting go. Aren't we, Julian? That's one thing I've seen this year is people are delving in and trying to create this new space for themselves and who they are. And they're having to dump people, places, things. It's very scary. But again, I go back to get quiet. When you're like, you know what? I can't live without peace anymore. You're the one that has to live with yourself, Julian. And once people get the beauty of that, that's my big vision. I always tell people is I want to help 1 million people create joy and peace consistently in their life. That's kind of what my vision is. And I don't care if they're business owners, stay-at-homes, moms, it doesn't matter, that I feel like we're really missing that. And that is part of the mental wellness piece that's missing is we're so busy trying to do for everyone else. We're not living our soul-aligned living. And once we get there, we're like, oh my gosh, why didn't I get there before? This feels so good. And if you use some of these little steps and some of these little questions, your brain continues to dial it in like, yeah, I get that. And by the way, getting even more quantum physics on your listeners, the life you want is actually already here. Your brain just needs to catch up to it. It's saying it's here, baby. It's on this serving platter. Just get through all the BS. I don't care if it's social media. I don't care if it's, I have to do this for my parents, all this. This is why we coach people, break through this trauma and get to this life. And it's like, why didn't I see this before? And there's no judgment. It's like, it just took a while. We all are in this together. We get lost in translation sometimes. And this year has done that a little bit. But the cool thing is, Julian, with these little things, these little questions, these little steps, even going back to our original point about mental health, get quiet, you can get back in really quickly. It doesn't have to be this years of like, I have all this trauma and old beliefs. No, when you get back in and do these little things daily, your brain starts going, yes, yes, yes. Remember, it's a high achieving machine, but it's also a search engine. If you don't give it something new, it's going to go back there. But if you give it something new, get quiet, get a gratitude list, sit with your peace. What is really important to you? What's your spiritual truth? It starts doing this like, oh, she wants me to go here. It's that simple. So understand that this neuroplasticity can work for you, and you have a lot more control and power in your life than you realize to live what you really want to live. And that's what I would give to anyone that's listening right now. You really have a lot more power than you realize.
Yeah, no, and I think you're on to something too about the value of baby steps. That little step, and it's as simple as exactly like taking one of the questions that you've put forward today to ask yourself exactly, take a moment of quiet, reflect on it seriously. That's a step, and that'll get you going somewhere. And I think one of the earlier guests that came on the show, he said it really well. Jim is still. He said, people tend to overestimate what they can accomplish in a day and underestimate what they can accomplish.
Totally.
And it really taps into this idea of these little baby steps, and you just chip away at these things, and next thing you know, all of a sudden you look back and wow,
yeah,
a lot has changed.
I love it. And one thing I always say to everyone that compares to, because that really stalls us as well, as we're constantly comparing, and social media gives us that all the time. Stop climbing up someone else's tree, because yours is pretty awesome to climb. There's only going to be one of you, which again, I'm an identical twin. There's only going to be one of you ever that crosses this earth ever. Think about that. That's like, you're going to have this creative story. To me, that really excites me. Like, no one will be my exact blueprint going down this journey of mine ever again. That to me gives me goosebumps. I'm like, wow, like I have this one life to really take this uniqueness, because there's never going to be a footprint like mine again. Let me do as much as I can with it. Let me filter out the noise, get really present what I really want, because at the end of the day, what I really want is not selfish. It's what the world needs, because that's why I was made.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, absolutely. And by the way, and back to what we were saying earlier about being grateful. I mean, exactly. There's only one of you, and you had a 1 in 400 trillion chance of existing. There's a lot to be grateful for.
Right, exactly. It's just that little stuff, which just sounds so funny. There's been days, by the way, listeners, where I've woken up to, and I went through the media, I'm like, I'm just in a pissed off mood. I am. And literally I turn around like, but you know what? There's one of me today. I can turn this around. And I literally was like, I'm so thankful for this cup of coffee and this sweatshirt I have on, because it's my favorite sweatshirt. It was game changing for me. It literally shifted me. And I was like, I woke up on the wrong side of the bed, which all of us do, you guys. I'm like, gosh, I'm pissed off. I'm angry. I'm going to throw something against the wall. I get it, you guys. We all have those human emotions, but we just said, but I got really grateful. Like, totally. Or I can shift it, because there's only one of me in this world that will ever exist. And I want to make the most of my life. And I'm going to get really grateful, even if it's just one stupid thing that I love. And it was my sweatshirt. And I kid you not, it completely shifted the rest of my day, because I refused to waste it. And I'm like, you guys, that's what I'd say to you. I've lost very close family members to cancer in the last couple of years. And when you see someone pass to another life, you get very hyper vigilant about living maximally every day. And the best compliment a friend of mine gave me, like, since they passed it for you, you want to live. Like you're so passionate about living. I said, that's the best compliment you could ever give me. And I want everybody to be passionate about their life, living their life, because there's only one of you. There's only one of you that will ever come across, and take it all in, the good, the bad days, the throwing the phone against the wall, to rejoicing that you got through something in action. In this year, I 100% believe, Julian, has been an awesome year. Not awesome in the way that people look at it superficially, but it has broken us. And it has brought us back down on our knees. What do we want? What do we believe in? Where do I want to go from here? And I do believe there's a huge transcendence that's happening among a lot of people if you allow it. But you got to allow it and surrender to it, and know that this is an awesome opportunity to be alive, to transcend to the next level. We all have, again, our storyline. I know this is more of a severe year per se, but when there's been adversity, 2008 crash. I remember I opened my first clinic in 2008. Me and Uber did fine. You know what I mean? So it's like always going back to, we are human beings that have been shown. That's part of why people, that's why this universe loves us. We're resilient. Oh, yeah. We're resilient to the physical virus, which, by the way, Julian, this virus vibrates at 5 hertz. 5 tiny hertz. That's lame. You know what gratitude and love and serving vibrate at? Like 250 hertz plus. Mm-hmm. Who do you think is going to win that battle?
Right.
This is what I'm saying. We have more power. This is why we've been around so long as we have,
No,
because we can battle.
Yeah, you're right. I think it has infused perspective that was severely lacking. It was something well before the pandemic. I would try to remind people about how incredible our lives are. That the normal human history for thousands of years, thousands and thousands of years, the normal human experience is death, disease, famine, and war. What you and I have experienced is an aberration, really, in the grand history of time, and yeah, exactly. I think people had lost that perspective and they've maybe regained it through this. So I agree that there's a number of sort of benefits, and certainly from a perspective shift.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's funny because I forgot what movie it was, but it was a scene and I couldn't tell you the movie. I'll get back to you on that, Julian, but where two angels were up in heaven looking down at like some organized chaos down on earth of these humans. And one of the angels was like, well, I feel sorry for them. We're having Zen life up here. And the other angel was like, I envy them. And the other angel was like, dude, look what we have. Why would you say that? And his response was, they go through so much hard stuff. And that's why they love so much. The human experience is about emotion that's up, down, adversity, thriving, we succeed. It's polarity at its best. Polarity. We can't know love without hate. We can't know peace without war. We can't know joy without, feeling sorrow. I mean, it is the human experience. And the angel said, it gives me chills talking about it. He's like, the human experience is so raw and real. I envy them because seeing them rise when they have hurt so much, that's why they love so much. We don't understand that. We really don't. And they don't. We understand real love because we understand real hate. We understand real peace because we know what it feels like this year to not have a lot of peace, right? So it's kind of
absolutely
cool.
The second that we arrived at utopia, we destroy it.
Oh, totally.
Right.
I challenge people, like, we can't stay at utopia. History shows that too long. We human beings weren't meant to be that. So the more you can understand adversity, that's why I don't like the word adversity. That's why I say mental edge. The more we understand as part of the human experience, I actually thrive. When I'm in adversity, I'm like, awesome. Yeah, like I just face planted. I literally am at that stage. I just face planted. Oh my God, this is really bad, but it's not that bad. What am I supposed to learn? When you just get as a part of the human experience, you go into less fight or flight and you start looking for solutions, like you're getting challenged and you're growing, just like going to the gym and putting on more weight. We were meant to move forward mentally, physically, emotionally, and it doesn't happen until we get triggered and put a little fire under us. Yeah. We sometimes humans have to be hit in the head with a baseball bat. Happened this year. Namaste that one. Let's move it forward. It's great. It's great. Let's all take that and have humility of like, what am I supposed to be learning individually to grow in myself and collectively as a nation? And I believe once we get through that, we can create this amazing human race that we always are and always have been and will be till the end of time. I do believe that.
That's wonderful. And again, like I really love, you some very positive messages, some very nice nuggets of specific questions that people can kind of start down this path and to think about. So I think that's been very helpful, and obviously it's very timely with how long this pandemic has been going on and will continue to affect and impact our lives. So Jennifer, how can people find you?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm the most active on LinkedIn and Instagram at Jennifer Watson Leadership. I answer all my own DMs. So anytime you need additional support or you have questions on what we've talked about, I love to continue to support people. I work with people one-on-one, to group, to teams and businesses, to so many different high performers, and I love what I do. So any way that you want to get a hold of me, the best is through my social media platforms, Jennifer Watson Leadership. But you can go to my website if you want to learn more about some of my different coaching programs, jenniferwatsonleadership.com. So I'd love to hear from you guys and get feedback on this episode for sure.
Absolutely. And I will for sure put links to those, to your websites and your social media accounts up above or below, depending on where they appear, on what platform. I really appreciate you giving your time and sharing these ideas and thoughts. I think it's been really a helpful discussion. Hopefully it helps a lot of people.
Thank you so much for having me, Julian. It was a pleasure and honor to be on your show. Thank you.
My pleasure. Take care.